Look at that. Pregnant and homeless. What a brilliant life choice. The woman's voice cut through the busy San Francisco street like a blade, her manicured finger pointing directly at Sophia as she sat sketching on the sidewalk, her 7-month pregnant belly visible beneath her worn jacket. But before we go any further, welcome back to Mr. Ross' Story Trail, where every story teaches us something profound about life. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. We're building an incredible community of people who believe in the power of true stories, and I don't want you to miss what's coming next. Trust me, this story will change how you see people forever. Sophia's cheeks burned as the laughter erupted around her. A group of college students had gathered, their phones now recording her humiliation for their social media entertainment. Bet she doesn't even know who the father is, one of them snickered, causing another wave of cruel laughter. This is exactly what's wrong with society. People making babies they can't afford. The 26-year-old artist clutched her sketchbook tighter, her knuckles white against the weathered cover. She'd heard variations of these comments countless times over the past few months, but they never stopped stinging. Each word felt like a physical blow, not just to her dignity, but to the innocent life growing inside her. What these strangers didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that the father of her child wasn't some random encounter or irresponsible mistake. The father was someone whose identity would shock every single person laughing at her in that moment. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever been judged based on what people could see on the surface? Maybe it was your clothes, your job, where you lived, or just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Have you ever felt the weight of strangers' assumptions crushing down on you, making you feel less than human? Because that's exactly what Sophia felt as those cruel words echoed in her ears. She wanted to scream, to tell them that she had once been an honor student with a full scholarship to art school, that she had loving parents who raised her with strong values, that she had dreams, talent, and a heart full of love for the child she carried. But instead, she did what she always did. She kept her head down and continued sketching, her artistic hands moving across the paper with practiced precision despite the trembling in her fingers. The drawing taking shape was of the San Francisco Bay at sunset, the same view where she had first met the man who would change her life forever. "Just ignore them, sweetie," whispered Harriet, an elderly woman who had become Sophia's closest friend on the streets. "They don't know your story, they don't know what you've been through, and they sure don't know what's coming." But Sophia couldn't ignore them. How could she when their words reflected what seemed like the entire world's opinion of her situation? A pregnant woman with no home, no visible means of support, and no obvious father figure in sight, she had become society's perfect target for judgment and ridicule. 2 years before she found herself sleeping in cardboard shelters and facing cruel mockery on the streets, Sophia Reyes had been living what many would consider the American dream. At 24, she was a star student at the San Francisco Art Institute, her paintings catching the attention of professors and gallery owners alike. Her small apartment near campus was filled with canvases, brushes, and the dreams of a young woman who believed talent and hard work could overcome any obstacle. Sophia's parents, Maria and Carlos Reyes, had immigrated from Mexico 26 years earlier with nothing but determination and hope. Carlos worked double shifts at a construction company, while Maria cleaned offices at night, both sacrificing their own comfort so their daughter could have opportunities they never had. They had saved every penny they could for Sophia's education, celebrating when she earned a partial scholarship that made art school possible. "Mia, you have a gift," her mother would say, watching Sophia paint in their tiny kitchen that doubled as her studio. "Don't let anyone tell you that art isn't important. The world needs beauty, and you create it with your hands." Sophia's professors agreed. Her work showed not just technical skill but emotional depth that was rare for someone her age. Her paintings captured the immigrant experience, the struggle of working-class families, and the hope that kept people moving forward despite overwhelming challenges. Several gallery owners had already expressed interest in showcasing her work after graduation. She had a close group of friends, a small but comfortable apartment, and a bright future ahead of her. Sophia volunteered at community centers teaching art to children whose families couldn't afford formal lessons. She was planning to spend the summer after graduation traveling through Europe, studying the masters whose work had inspired her since childhood. Life was good, filled with purpose and possibility. Sophia went to bed each night exhausted but happy, knowing that her parents' sacrifices were paying off, that their immigrant story would have the ending they had dreamed of when they first crossed the border decades earlier. Everything changed on a rainy Thursday evening in March. Sophia was in her studio working on her senior thesis project when her phone rang. The voice on the other end was professional, distant, delivering news that would shatter her world in a single sentence. "Miss Reyes, there's been an accident. Your parents were involved in a collision on Highway 101. You need to come to San Francisco General Hospital immediately." The drunk driver who slammed into her parents' car walked away with minor injuries. Maria and Carlos Reyes didn't walk away at all. They died holding hands in the wreckage, their final moments spent together after 26 years of marriage and shared dreams. Sophia stood in the hospital hallway, staring at the white walls and fluorescent lights, unable to process the reality that her parents were gone. The same parents who had called her just hours earlier, excited about her upcoming art show. The same parents who had been planning to attend her graduation in 2 months. The funeral consumed what little savings the family had. Sophia discovered that her parents had been so focused on paying for her education that they had minimal life insurance. The medical bills from their final hospital stay, combined with funeral costs, devoured every penny they had worked so hard to save. But the real devastation came when Sophia learned about the debts her parents had hidden from her. In their determination to support her dreams, they had taken out loans, used credit cards, and borrowed money from friends to cover expenses they couldn't afford. They had been living paycheck to paycheck, pouring everything into their daughter's future. Within weeks of the funeral, the bills started arriving. Credit card companies, loan officers, and collection agencies all demanded payment from Sophia as the sole heir to her parents' estate. The estate that consisted of debts far exceeding any assets. Her partial scholarship covered tuition, but living expenses, art supplies, and basic necessities had always come from her parents' support. Without that income, Sophia couldn't afford to stay in school. She took a job at a local restaurant, working every hour she could, but it wasn't enough. The art supplies alone cost hundreds of dollars each month. Canvas, paints, brushes, and all the materials needed for her senior projects became impossible luxuries. Sophia tried to make do with cheaper alternatives, but her work suffered. The quality that had once impressed professors and gallery owners began to decline. Her grades dropped as she struggled to balance work and school. She was exhausted, grieving, and drowning in debt. The scholarship committee called her in for a meeting, expressing concern about her academic performance and attendance. "We understand you're going through a difficult time," the committee chair said with practiced sympathy. "But we have standards to maintain. Other students are waiting for opportunities." Sophia lost her scholarship 3 months before graduation. All those years of hard work, all her parents' sacrifices, all the dreams they had built together, gone. She couldn't afford to stay in school to finish her degree, and she couldn't afford to keep her apartment without the partial housing assistance that came with her student status. Even as her world crumbled, Sophia refused to give up her art completely. She sold most of her supplies to pay bills, keeping only the basics, a few brushes, a small set of paints, and a sketchbook her mother had given her for Christmas. Living in her car at first, then in shelters when the weather became too cold, Sophia continued to draw. She sketched the faces of other homeless individuals, capturing their stories in pencil and charcoal. She drew the city from angles most people never saw, from beneath, overpasses, from the steps of closed businesses, from the corners where society's forgotten gathered. Her work took on a new depth, a raw honesty that came from experiencing loss and hardship firsthand. The paintings of her comfortable student life had been technically skilled, but these new drawings held something deeper, truth, pain, and a profound understanding of human struggle. Other homeless individuals began to notice her talent. Word spread through the community about the young woman who could capture someone's essence in a few quick strokes. People would sit for portraits in exchange for sharing their food or offering her a safer place to sleep. Sophia set up on street corners, offering portraits to tourists and passers-by for small donations. Her skilled hands could create a likeness in minutes, and her artistic eye captured not just physical features, but something essential about each person she drew. Life on the streets followed a harsh rhythm. Sophia woke each morning stiff and cold, her body aching from sleeping on concrete or in uncomfortable positions. Her first priority was always finding a public restroom where she could wash her face and hands, trying to maintain some dignity despite her circumstances. Breakfast came from soup kitchens or food banks, long lines of people who had all fallen through society's cracks in different ways. Sophia learned the schedules, which churches served meals on which days, which community centers offered shower facilities, where she could charge her phone to stay connected to the world. She carried her few possessions in a worn backpack, the sketchbook, her remaining art supplies, a change of clothes, and important documents sealed in a plastic bag. Everything else was luxury she couldn't afford. The hardest part wasn't the physical discomfort, or even the hunger, it was the invisibility. People looked through her as if she didn't exist, their eyes sliding past her without acknowledgement. She had gone from being a promising young artist to being part of the urban landscape people preferred to ignore. But Sophia endured. She drew portraits for tourists, sketched the city's hidden corners, and held on to the hope that somehow, someday, things would change. She didn't know the change would come in the form of a chance encounter with a mysterious man who would see her not as a homeless woman, but as the remarkable artist she had always been. 3 months before Sophia found herself facing cruel mockery on the streets, she had been sitting at Pier 39 as the sun began to set over San Francisco Bay. It was one of her favorite spots for sketching. The light was perfect, and tourists often stopped to watch her work, occasionally paying for quick portraits that kept her fed. The waterfront was busy that October evening, filled with families taking photos and couples enjoying romantic walks. Sophia had set up her makeshift easel against a railing, working on a drawing of the bay when she noticed him. He stood alone at the edge of the pier, staring out at the water with an intensity that caught her attention. While everyone else was laughing, talking, taking selfies, this man seemed completely absorbed in his own thoughts. He was well-dressed, expensive suit, polished shoes, but there was something about his posture that spoke of deep solitude. Sophia found herself sketching him without permission, her hand moving across the paper as she captured the way he held himself, the slight slump of his shoulders that suggested he was carrying invisible weight. She had always been drawn to drawing people who seemed to hold untold stories. "That's quite good," came a voice behind her. Sophia startled, realizing the man had approached while she was lost in her work. Up close, she could see he was probably in his early 30s, with kind eyes that seemed older than his face. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, moving to close her sketchbook. "I should have asked permission." "No, please," he said, holding up a hand. "I'm flattered. It's been a long time since anyone looked at me and saw something worth drawing." He introduced himself simply as Nathan, extending his hand with a genuine smile. There was something refreshing about his directness, the way he looked at her without the judgment she had grown accustomed to from strangers. "I'm Sophia," she replied, shaking his hand, "and I charge $5 for portraits if you're interested." Nathan laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise him. $5? For work like that? You're severely undervaluing your talent. What started as a chance encounter became something neither of them had expected. Nathan returned to the waterfront the following evening, finding Sophia in the same spot. This time he sat for a proper portrait, paying her $50 despite her protests. "Consider it an investment in local art," he said when she tried to refuse the extra money. They talked while she drew, discovering they both loved discussing philosophy, art history, and the way cities changed people. Nathan was remarkably well-read, able to discuss everything from ancient Greek philosophers to contemporary social issues with equal insight. "You have an interesting perspective on urban inequality," he said during their third meeting. "Most people see homelessness as a personal failing rather than a systemic problem." Sophia paused in her sketching. "It's hard to see it as personal failing when you're living it," she said quietly. Nathan's expression grew serious. "I didn't mean to assume." "It's okay," Sophia interrupted. "I don't hide what I am. I just don't lead with it." From that moment, their conversations took on a different quality. Nathan began asking her about her experiences, not with pity or curiosity, but with genuine interest in understanding her perspective. He shared his own struggles with isolation, though he remained vague about the specifics of his life. Their meetings became weekly, then twice weekly. Nathan would arrive with coffee for both of them, and they would sit watching the sun set over the bay, while discussing everything from art to politics to their dreams for the future. "What would you do if money weren't an issue?" Nathan asked one evening. "Travel," Sophia answered without hesitation. "I'd go to every major art museum in the world. I'd study the masters in person, learn techniques I've only read about. I'd paint landscapes that take my breath away." "And what's stopping you?" Sophia gestured to herself, to her worn clothes and the backpack that held her entire life. "Reality," she said simply. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes reality is more flexible than we think. The more time Sophia spent with Nathan, the more she realized how little she actually knew about him. He was clearly intelligent, well-educated, and had money. His clothes were expensive, and he never hesitated to pay for their coffee or meals. But when she asked about his work, his answers were always vague. "I'm in technology," he would say, then quickly change the subject. "What kind of technology?" "Software development." Nothing too exciting. When she pressed for details, he would deflect with questions about her art or observations about the city. It wasn't that he was rude about it, quite the opposite. He was so skilled at redirecting conversations that Sophia often didn't realize he hadn't answered her questions until later. She never saw where he lived, never met any of his friends, never learned his last name. He would appear at their meeting spots as if materialized from nowhere, and when their evenings ended, he would disappear just as mysteriously. "Do you have family?" she asked one evening. "Not really," he replied. My parents died when I was young, no siblings. Work keeps me pretty busy. That sounds lonely. It is, he admitted. That's why these evenings with you mean so much to me. You're the first person in years who's talked to me like I'm just human. Sophia found his secretiveness intriguing rather than troubling. In her experience, people who were too eager to share their life stories often had less interesting lives to share. Nathan's mystery suggested depth, complexity, perhaps even pain he wasn't ready to discuss. By their 10th meeting, Sophia realized she was falling in love. It wasn't just Nathan's intelligence or his kindness toward her. It was the way he listened when she spoke, the way he remembered details about her life, the way he made her feel seen and valued in a world that had taught her she was invisible. I brought you something, Nathan said one evening, producing a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a set of professional-grade drawing pencils, the kind Sophia had once owned when she was a student, the kind she couldn't afford to replace when her supplies ran out. Nathan, I can't accept this, she said, though her fingers were already testing the weight of the pencils. You can and you will, he said firmly. Your talent deserves proper tools. That night, their relationship changed. Sophia invited Nathan to see some of her recent work, sketches she had made of life on the streets, portraits of people society had forgotten. She had never shown these drawings to anyone, afraid they would be seen as depressing or worthless. Nathan studied each drawing carefully, his expression growing more serious as he looked through her portfolio. These are extraordinary, he said finally. This isn't just art. It's social commentary, it's historical documentation. It's important work, Sophia. When he looked up at her, there was something in his eyes that made her heart race. You're remarkable, he said softly. Do you know that? Before she could respond, he kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, as if he was afraid she might pull away. But Sophia didn't pull away. Instead, she kissed him back, pouring all her feelings into that moment. Now here's something I want you to think about. Have you ever met someone who completely changed your perspective on life? Someone who made you feel valuable when the world told you that you weren't? Drop a comment below and let me know about a person who believed in you when no one else did. Your story might inspire someone else who's going through a difficult time. After that first kiss, Sophia and Nathan's relationship deepened quickly. They began meeting more frequently, and their conversations grew more intimate. Nathan shared more about his childhood, his struggles with loneliness, and his feelings of disconnection from the world around him. I built a life that looks successful from the outside, he told her one evening, but it feels empty. Until I met you, I was just going through the motions. Sophia understood that feeling. Before losing her parents, she had been focused on academic success, gallery shows, and building a career. But those goals had seemed hollow compared to the simple joy of creating art and connecting with another person. Their physical relationship developed naturally. Nathan was gentle, patient, and deeply attentive to her needs. He never pressured her, never made her feel like she owed him anything because of his kindness or the gifts he occasionally brought her. I want to take care of you, he said one night as they lay together in a small hotel room he had gotten for the evening. I don't need taking care of, Sophia replied, though she appreciated the sentiment. I know you don't need it, Nathan said, but I want to do it anyway. Not because you're helpless, but because you're precious to me. Their love story was unconventional, built on quiet moments and deep conversations rather than typical dating experiences. They couldn't go to fancy restaurants or attend social events, not because Nathan couldn't afford it, but because Sophia wouldn't feel comfortable in those settings with her limited wardrobe and circumstances. Instead, they created their own world. Nathan would bring picnic dinners to secluded spots overlooking the bay. Sophia would sketch while he read to her from books he thought she would enjoy. They talked about everything and nothing, building an intimacy that transcended their different circumstances. But even as their relationship deepened, Nathan maintained his secretive nature about his work and his life beyond their meetings. Sophia sensed there was something significant he wasn't telling her, but she respected his privacy just as he respected hers. The night everything changed between Sophia and Nathan was unexpectedly cold for November. Sophia had been sketching at their usual meeting spot when Nathan arrived with an urgency she had never seen before. I can't let you sleep outside tonight, he said, his voice filled with concern. The temperature's supposed to drop below freezing. I've survived worse, Sophia replied, though she was already shivering despite her layered clothing. I know you have, Nathan said, but you don't have to tonight. He led her to a small apartment across town, explaining that he kept it for occasions when his main residence felt too overwhelming. The space was modest but comfortable, with large windows overlooking the city and walls that were surprisingly bare. It's not much, Nathan said, suddenly seeming nervous, but it's warm, and you'll be safe here. Sophia looked around the apartment, taking in the expensive furniture and the view that probably cost more per month than she had ever earned in a year. "Nathan, I can't stay here. This is too much. It's not charity," he said quickly. "It's two people who care about each other, and one of them happening to have a warm place to sleep." That night, their relationship crossed a line they had both been approaching carefully. Their intimacy was born not from passion alone, but from a deep emotional connection that had been building for months. Nathan was tender, attentive, and made Sophia feel cherished in a way she had never experienced. "I love you," he whispered in the darkness. "I love you too," Sophia replied, meaning it completely. Over the following weeks, Nathan repeatedly offered to help Sophia improve her living situation. He suggested paying for an apartment, offering to fund her return to school, or even just providing money for better supplies and warmer clothes. Each time, Sophia declined with increasing firmness. "I don't want to be your charity case," she told him, after he offered to rent her a studio apartment. "You're not a charity case," Nathan insisted. "You're the woman I love, and I want to take care of you." "But that's not who I am," Sophia replied. "I'm not someone who needs rescuing. I'm someone who's had bad luck and made the best of it." Nathan struggled to understand her perspective. He had the means to solve her problems instantly, but Sophia's pride wouldn't allow it. She had survived on her own for over a year, and accepting his help felt like admitting defeat. "I built my life from nothing once," she explained. "I can do it again, but I need to do it myself or I'll never trust that it's really mine." This fundamental disagreement created tension in their relationship. Nathan felt helpless watching the woman he loved struggle with problems he could easily solve. Sophia felt pressured to accept help that would fundamentally change the power balance between them. They compromised where they could. Nathan would bring Sophia meals, but she insisted on paying him back by creating portraits he could keep. He would provide art supplies, but only ones she would have eventually been able to afford herself. She would stay in his apartment occasionally, but only during the worst weather, and only when he wasn't there. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met," Nathan told her one evening, though his tone was affectionate rather than frustrated. "And you're the most persistent man I've ever met," Sophia replied with a smile. On a Tuesday evening in December, Nathan failed to show up at their usual meeting spot. Sophia waited for over an hour, growing increasingly worried as darkness fell and the temperature dropped. Nathan had never missed a meeting without calling or sending word. She waited at the apartment where they sometimes met, but he never appeared. By the third day, Sophia was genuinely frightened. Nathan might be secretive about his work, but he was reliable about their relationship. Something was wrong. On the fourth day, Sophia found a note slipped under the door of a community center where she sometimes taught art classes. The handwriting was Nathan's, but the message was confusing and unlike anything he had ever written to her. "Sophia, I have to leave the city immediately for business reasons I can't explain. I don't know when I'll be back, but I will contact you as soon as I can. Please don't try to find me. Trust that I love you and that I will return. Take care of yourself. Anne." Sophia read the note dozens of times, searching for hidden meanings or clues about what had happened. The formal tone was completely unlike Nathan's usual warm, intimate communication. The instruction not to try to find him was particularly puzzling. How could she find him when she didn't even know his last name? She folded the note carefully and kept it in her sketchbook, the only tangible proof that their relationship had been real. The timing felt cruel. Just as their love had deepened, just as she had begun to trust someone completely, he had vanished without explanation. Sophia's initial response to Nathan's disappearance was disbelief. She convinced herself that he would return within a few days, that whatever business had taken him away would be quickly resolved. She continued going to their meeting spots, sketching while she waited, telling herself she was just being patient. But as days turned into weeks, disbelief gave way to confusion, then to pain. Sophia found herself questioning everything about their relationship. Had Nathan been sincere about his feelings? Had she misunderstood the depth of their connection? Was this how relationships worked in his world, intense while they lasted, but ultimately disposable? The worst part was having no one to talk to about her heartbreak. The other homeless individuals she knew had their own problems, and she had never shared details about Nathan with anyone. Her grief was private, unexplainable, and consuming. Sophia threw herself into her art, creating some of the most emotionally raw drawings of her life. She sketched empty piers, vacant benches, and solitary figures staring at the water. Her work from this period captured a loneliness that went beyond physical isolation. It was the loneliness of losing someone who had made her feel whole. She began to understand why Nathan had seemed so familiar with solitude when they first met. Perhaps he had experienced this kind of abandonment before. Perhaps his secretive nature was a defense mechanism, a way to protect himself from the pain of genuine connection. Despite Nathan's note asking her not to try to find him, Sophia couldn't help herself. She returned to every place they had visited together, hoping to catch a glimpse of him or find some clue about where he might have gone. She went to the waterfront every evening, sketching the same view where they had first met. She visited the coffee shops where they had spent long hours talking. She even walked past the apartment building where they had been intimate, though she had no way to access the unit. Sophia asked other regular fixtures at these locations if they had seen Nathan, but her descriptions were too vague to be helpful. A man in his 30s, well-dressed, kind eyes. Half the men in San Francisco could match that description. She began to realize how carefully Nathan had constructed their relationship to leave no trail. He had never introduced her to friends, never mentioned specific places he frequented, never left behind any personal belongings that might give her clues about his identity. The mystery of Nathan's disappearance consumed Sophia's thoughts. She created elaborate theories about what might have happened. Family emergencies, business crises, even the possibility that he had been lying about his feelings all along. But none of her theories satisfied her need to understand why someone who claimed to love her would disappear so completely. 3 months after Nathan's disappearance, Sophia discovered she was pregnant. The timing was unmistakable. The baby had been conceived during one of their intimate nights together. Now she faced the reality of carrying the child of a man who had vanished without a trace, a man whose last name she didn't even know. Sophia stared at the plastic stick in her trembling hand, the 2 pink lines blurring through her tears. She was sitting in the cramped bathroom of a fast food restaurant, having purchased the pregnancy test with the last few dollars she had earned from street portraits that week. For the past month, she had been telling herself that her missed period was due to stress. Life on the streets was hard on the body, and she had experienced irregular cycles before during particularly difficult times. The nausea she had attributed to bad food from the soup kitchen, the fatigue to sleeping on cold concrete. But deep down, she had known. Her body felt different, foreign yet familiar in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. The morning sickness that struck with precision timing, the way certain smells made her stomach revolt, the tender soreness in her breasts, all signs she had been trying to ignore. Now, confronted with undeniable proof, Sophia felt the full weight of her situation crash down on her. She was pregnant with Nathan's child, and he had been gone for 3 months without any way to contact him. She was alone, homeless, and about to become responsible for another human life. Sophia wrapped the test in paper towels and stuffed it into her backpack, her mind racing with the implications. She walked out of the restaurant into the bright San Francisco afternoon, but the world seemed different now. Every pregnant woman she passed, every mother pushing a stroller, every baby's cry from a nearby park, all of it felt like a preview of a future she wasn't prepared for. She found herself at the waterfront where she had first met Nathan, sitting on the same bench where they had shared their first conversation. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was back where it all began, but now she was facing the consequences alone. "Nathan, where are you?" she whispered to the wind, placing her hand on her still flat stomach. "I need you now more than ever." The first few days after discovering her pregnancy were a blur of emotions and impossible decisions. Sophia knew she had 3 options: terminate the pregnancy, carry the baby to term and place it for adoption, or keep the child and raise it herself. Each choice seemed overwhelming for different reasons. Terminating the pregnancy would be the most practical decision given her circumstances, but every time she considered it, she thought about Nathan's gentle hands and kind eyes, about the love they had shared, and about the piece of him that was now growing inside her. Adoption seemed like the responsible choice, giving the baby a chance at a stable life with parents who could provide everything Sophia couldn't. But the thought of carrying a child for 9 months, feeling it grow and move inside her, only to give it away, felt like losing Nathan all over again. Keeping the baby seemed impossible. How could she provide for a child when she could barely provide for herself? How could she give birth without insurance, raise a child without stable housing, or protect an infant from the dangers of life on the streets? Sophia spent sleepless nights wrestling with these decisions, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach as she lay in shelters or hidden doorways. She found herself talking to the growing life inside her, sharing her fears and hopes the way she had once shared them with Nathan. "I don't know how to do this," she would whisper. "I don't know how to be a mother when I can barely take care of myself. But I already love you so much, and I loved your father so much, and maybe that's enough to start with." The emotional turmoil was unlike anything Sophia had experienced, even during the darkest days after her parents' death. Grief had been painful but straightforward. She had lost something precious and had to learn to live without it. This was different. This was grief mixed with hope, fear mixed with love, despair mixed with possibility. She began sketching obsessively, her drawings taking on new themes of mothers and children, of protection and vulnerability. of love and loss intertwined. Her art became her therapy, the only way she could process the overwhelming complexity of her emotions. Now, I want you to pause for a moment and really think about Sophia's situation. Here's a woman who's already lost everything. Her parents, her home, her education, her future as she had planned it. She's been living on the streets for over a year, surviving day to day. And now she's pregnant with the child of a man who disappeared without explanation. Put yourself in her shoes. What would you do? Would you choose the practical path, knowing it might be the smartest decision but could haunt you forever? Would you choose adoption, giving the child a better life but sacrificing your own connection to the only piece of your lost love that remains? Or would you choose to keep the baby, facing impossible odds but holding on to hope and love? There's no right answer here, and that's what makes Sophia's story so powerful. Life doesn't give us perfect choices. It gives us impossible ones, and we have to find a way to live with whatever we decide. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think you would do in Sophia's position. And be honest, don't give me what you think is the right answer. Tell me what you would actually do if you were scared, alone, and facing the biggest decision of your life. Your perspective might help someone else who's struggling with their own impossible choice. And while you're thinking about that, make sure you're subscribed to this channel because Sophia's story is about to take a turn that will change everything. The man who disappeared from her life isn't just anyone, and when the truth comes out, it will shock everyone who judged her. Once Sophia decided to keep the baby, she faced a harsh reality. Being pregnant while homeless presented challenges she had never anticipated. The first and most immediate concern was prenatal care. Without insurance or a permanent address, accessing regular medical care seemed impossible. Sophia spent hours researching free clinics and community health centers, taking buses across the city to appointments that often required waiting for hours in crowded waiting rooms. The intake forms always asked for an address, and Sophia had to explain repeatedly that she was homeless, enduring the judgment and assumptions that came with that admission. "You need to take better care of yourself," a nurse at the free clinic told her during her first appointment. "Pregnancy isn't something you can wing. You need proper nutrition, regular sleep, and a stable environment." Sophia wanted to laugh at the absurdity of the advice. Proper nutrition when she relied on soup kitchens and food banks? Regular sleep when she never knew where she would be spending the night? A stable environment when stability was a luxury she couldn't afford? The physical challenges of pregnancy compounded the difficulties of homelessness. Morning sickness made it harder to keep down the often questionable food from charitable organizations. Fatigue made it more difficult to walk long distances between resources. Her growing belly made it harder to find comfortable positions for sleeping on benches or in doorways. Sophia had to become strategic about her survival in ways she had never considered before. She learned which shelters had the cleanest facilities, which food banks offered the most nutritious options, and which areas of the city were safest for a pregnant woman alone. She started carrying prenatal vitamins given to her by the clinic, protecting them like precious treasures. She modified her diet as much as possible, avoiding anything that might harm the baby even when she was desperately hungry. She gave up the occasional cigarette or drink that had sometimes helped her cope with stress. The emotional challenges were just as significant. Sophia found herself constantly worried about the baby's health, wondering if her living conditions were causing harm. She read every pamphlet the clinic gave her, memorizing lists of things to avoid and symptoms to watch for. Other homeless individuals began to notice her changing body, and reactions were mixed. Some women offered advice and support, sharing their own experiences of pregnancy in difficult circumstances. Others were judgmental, questioning her decision to bring a child into such an unstable situation. "You're making it harder for all of us," one woman at the shelter told her. "People already think we're irresponsible. Now you're proving them right." Sophia learned to avoid certain areas where she might encounter hostility, but she couldn't avoid the constant scrutiny from strangers who saw her pregnant belly and made assumptions about her character, her intelligence, and her worth as a human being. As her pregnancy progressed, Sophia realized that her biggest challenge wasn't just surviving. It was maintaining hope for a future that seemed increasingly uncertain. She was bringing a child into a world that had shown her little kindness, but she was determined to create a different reality for her baby, even if she didn't know how. The mockery began subtly at first, then grew bolder as Sophia's pregnancy became more visible. At 4 months, she could still hide her condition under loose clothing, but by 6 months, there was no disguising the growing life inside her. One afternoon, Sophia was sitting outside a grocery store sketching when a group of teenage girls walked by. She heard their conversation clearly, as they made no effort to lower their voices. "Oh my God, look at that," one of them said, pointing at Sophia. "She's pregnant and homeless. That's like the most irresponsible thing ever." "I know, right?" another girl replied. "Like if you can't even take care of yourself, why would you have a baby?" "That's so selfish. My mom says people like that just want welfare money, added a third. They pop out babies for government checks. Sophia's cheeks burned, but she kept her head down and continued sketching. She had learned that engaging with these comments only made them worse, turning casual cruelty into active confrontation. Later that same week, Sophia was waiting for a bus when a businessman in an expensive suit noticed her condition. He was talking loudly on his phone, clearly intending for her to hear. "Yeah, I'm stuck at a bus stop with some pregnant homeless woman," he said into his phone. "This is exactly what's wrong with this city. These people have no shame, no responsibility. They just expect society to clean up their mistakes." The other people waiting for the bus shifted uncomfortably, some nodding in agreement, others looking away in embarrassment. Sophia felt like she was on display, a cautionary tale about poor life choices and moral failure. The worst incident happened outside a coffee shop where Sophia sometimes sat to sketch. A woman in yoga clothes was walking with her friend when she spotted Sophia. "Look at that," the woman said, not bothering to whisper. "Pregnant and begging. You know what that is? That's a professional victim. She probably got pregnant on purpose to get sympathy money." "Should we call social services?" her friend asked. "I mean, that baby's going to be born into such a horrible situation." "What's the point?" the first woman replied. "People like that don't change. The kid will probably end up just like the mother." Sophia felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in public. She packed up her sketching supplies and walked away, but the words followed her. The assumption that she was a bad person, that her child was doomed, that she represented everything wrong with society. It all felt like physical blows. Even in places that were supposed to offer refuge, Sophia found herself subject to judgment and speculation. The shelter workers, who should have been her allies, often treated her pregnancy as a burden rather than a blessing. "Room 15 is the pregnant one," Sophia overheard a volunteer say to another worker during check-in one evening. "She's been here 3 times this week. I think she's trying to game the system." "How so?" the other worker asked. "You know how it is. Pregnant women get priority for housing assistance. She's probably thinking this baby is her ticket to an apartment." Sophia stood in line, pretending not to hear, but the words stung. She had never asked for special treatment, never mentioned her pregnancy except when required for medical forms. The idea that she was using her unborn child as a manipulation tactic was deeply hurtful. During a group meeting about shelter rules, the coordinator addressed the room with barely concealed frustration. "We need to talk about responsibility," she said, her eyes lingering on Sophia. "This shelter is not a nursery. We're not equipped to handle babies, and we can't have people making life choices that burden our resources." The message was clear, even if Sophia wasn't mentioned by name. Her pregnancy was seen as a problem to be managed rather than a life to be celebrated. One night, Sophia was trying to sleep when she heard 2 volunteers talking in the hallway outside her room. "I feel bad for her," one said quietly. "But you have to wonder what she was thinking. Getting pregnant when you're already homeless? That's not fair to the baby." "Maybe she doesn't know who the father is," the other replied. "You know how it is with some of these women. They're not always making good choices about men. Still, there are options. She could have handled this differently." Sophia pulled her thin blanket over her head, trying to block out their words. The assumption that she was promiscuous, that she didn't know who her baby's father was, that she should have terminated the pregnancy, all of it felt like a violation of her privacy and dignity. The most hurtful comment came from a social worker who was supposed to be helping Sophia access resources. "I'm going to be honest with you," the woman said during their meeting. "Your situation is complicated. Single, homeless, pregnant. It's not a combination that inspires confidence in potential landlords or employers. You might want to consider your options while you still have them." The coded language was clear. Get rid of the baby, and your problems become more manageable. Sophia's experiences with healthcare providers were particularly painful because she had hoped to find understanding and support from people trained to help. Instead, she often encountered judgment disguised as medical advice. At her first prenatal appointment, the intake nurse looked at Sophia's paperwork with obvious disapproval. "No permanent address, no insurance, no partner listed," the nurse read aloud. "This is going to be a high-risk pregnancy for multiple reasons." When Sophia asked what that meant, the nurse's response was blunt. Stress, poor nutrition, unstable housing, lack of support system. All of these factors increase the risk of complications. You need to seriously consider whether you're in a position to carry this pregnancy to term. A different doctor at the clinic was more direct in her disapproval. "Miss Reyes, I have to ask, was this pregnancy planned?" "No, but..." "And the father, is he involved?" "It's complicated." "I see. Well, given your circumstances, I want to make sure you're aware of all your options. There are excellent family planning resources available, and it's not too late to make different choices." The assumption that Sophia couldn't possibly want this baby, that keeping it would be a mistake, was embedded in every interaction. Medical professionals who should have been focused on her health and the baby's well-being instead seemed focused on convincing her to change her mind. During one particularly difficult appointment, Sophia was waiting in the examination room when she overheard her doctor talking to a nurse in the hallway. The homeless woman in room 3, this is her 4th visit, and she's still insisting on continuing the pregnancy. I've explained the risks, suggested alternatives, but she's not budging. Some people just won't listen to reason, the nurse replied. What can you do? Sophia realized that her medical team saw her as a problem patient, someone who was making irrational decisions despite their professional advice. The fact that she loved this baby, that she had reasons for her choices, seemed irrelevant to them. The cruelest comments came from complete strangers who felt entitled to share their opinions about Sophia's life choices. These encounters were random and unpredictable, making it impossible for Sophia to prepare for or avoid them. While walking through a park one afternoon, Sophia sat on a bench to rest. A jogger stopped nearby and approached her. "Excuse me," the woman said, "but I have to ask, are you really going to bring a baby into this situation? I mean, that's not fair to the child, is it?" Sophia stared at the woman, shocked by the directness of the question. "You don't know anything about my situation," Sophia replied quietly. "I can see your situation," the woman shot back, "and I can see that you're making a selfish choice. That baby deserves better than this." The woman jogged away, leaving Sophia shaken and angry. The assumption that she was selfish, that she didn't want the best for her child, was particularly painful because it was so far from the truth. Another incident occurred at a bus stop where Sophia was waiting with her art supplies. A man in a business suit noticed her condition and felt compelled to share his thoughts. "You know what you represent," he said without preamble. "You represent everything that's wrong with this generation. No personal responsibility, no planning, just expecting society to fix your problems." "Sir, I'm just waiting for the bus," Sophia replied. "And I'm just speaking the truth. You're going to have a baby you can't support. And guess who's going to pay for it? Taxpayers like me. We're the ones who'll be footing the bill for your mistakes." The man's anger seemed disproportionate to the situation, as if Sophia's mere existence was a personal affront to him. But his words reflected a broader societal attitude that she encountered regularly, the idea that her pregnancy was a burden on society rather than a new life to be celebrated. The cumulative effect of constant judgment was devastating to Sophia's mental health. Each cruel comment, each assumption, each look of disgust chipped away at her self-worth and her confidence in her decisions. Sophia began to internalize the criticism, wondering if everyone was right about her. Maybe she was being selfish. Maybe she was setting her child up for failure. Maybe she was everything people said she was: irresponsible, short-sighted, a burden on society. The stress affected her physically as well. Sophia experienced headaches, trouble sleeping, and periods of depression that worried her about the baby's health. She knew that stress during pregnancy could have negative effects, but she couldn't escape the source of her stress. She found herself avoiding public places where possible, limiting her interactions with strangers to reduce opportunities for judgment. This isolation made her existing loneliness worse, cutting her off from potential sources of support and connection. Sophia's art became darker during this period, filled with images of isolation and despair. She drew women hunched over in shame, children reaching for mothers who couldn't provide for them, and abstract representations of the weight of social judgment. The most painful part was the way the constant criticism made her doubt her love for Nathan and their relationship. Strangers' assumptions that she didn't know who the father was, that she was promiscuous or manipulative, made her question whether what she and Nathan had shared was real or meaningful. But even in her darkest moments, Sophia held on to one truth. She loved this baby, and she would do whatever it took to protect and provide for her child. The judgment of strangers couldn't change that fundamental reality, even when it felt like it was crushing her under its weight. Sophia was sitting on the steps of the public library, sketching tourists as they passed by, when a woman approached her with purpose. Unlike the many people who had judged Sophia over the past months, this woman's expression held genuine concern rather than criticism. "Excuse me," the woman said, settling down beside Sophia without invitation. "I'm Desiree Monroe, and I run a program that helps women in situations like yours. I've been watching you for a few weeks now, and I'm impressed by your resilience." Sophia looked up warily. She had grown suspicious of strangers who claimed to want to help, as their assistance often came with conditions or judgment she couldn't accept. "I'm not looking for charity," Sophia said carefully. "Good," Desiree replied with a warm smile. "Because I'm not offering charity, I'm offering opportunity." Desiree explained that she had once been homeless herself, pregnant and alone at 19. She had clawed her way out of poverty through a combination of determination, luck, and the few people who had believed in her potential rather than judging her circumstances. I started this program because I know what it's like to be written off by society, Desiree continued. I know what it's like to have people assume you're stupid or worthless because you're in a difficult situation. But I also know that circumstances don't define character. What struck Sophia most about Desiree was her directness. She didn't speak in the patronizing tones that social workers often used, and she didn't offer empty platitudes about everything working out. Instead, she spoke honestly about the challenges ahead while maintaining genuine optimism about Sophia's potential. "I've been watching you work," Desiree said, nodding toward Sophia's sketchbook. "You have real talent, and more importantly, you have discipline. Most people in your situation would have given up on art entirely. The fact that you're still creating, still practicing your craft, tells me everything I need to know about your character." For the first time in months, Sophia felt seen, not as a problem to be solved or a cautionary tale to be avoided, but as a person with value and potential. Desiree's recognition of her artistic ability was particularly meaningful because it acknowledged the part of Sophia that had nothing to do with her circumstances. Desiree's program operated out of a community center in the Mission District, a neighborhood that had managed to maintain its character despite gentrification pressures. The center served as a hub for various social services, but Desiree's program was unique in its focus on helping women develop skills and confidence rather than just providing temporary assistance. "We're not in the business of managing poverty," Desiree explained as she gave Sophia a tour of the facilities. "We're in the business of ending it, one woman at a time." The center had a small art studio where local artists taught classes to community members. When Desiree mentioned Sophia's background and talent, the program coordinator was immediately interested in having her assist with children's art classes. "We need someone who understands struggle," the coordinator explained. "These kids come from difficult backgrounds, and they need to see that art can be a source of hope and expression, not just a luxury for wealthy people." The position was part-time and paid modestly, but it offered Sophia something she hadn't had in over a year, a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. Working with children reminded her why she had fallen in love with art in the first place, not for fame or financial success, but for the pure joy of creation and the ability to help others express themselves. Sophia's first day teaching was nervous but rewarding. The children, ranging in age from 8 to 14, were initially skeptical of their pregnant instructor. But as Sophia demonstrated techniques and shared stories about finding beauty in unexpected places, they began to open up. Miss Sophia, one 10-year-old, asked, "Why do you draw sad things sometimes?" "Because sad things are part of life," Sophia replied. "And when we draw them, we can understand them better. We can turn our pain into something beautiful." The children connected with this honesty. Many of them were dealing with their own challenges, family instability, financial stress, neighborhood violence, and Sophia's acknowledgement that art could address difficult emotions gave them permission to express their own struggles through their work. Through Desiree's program, Sophia learned about a transitional housing program specifically designed for pregnant women and new mothers. The application process was extensive, requiring multiple interviews, background checks, and references. But Desiree helped Sophia navigate the bureaucracy. "The most important thing," Desiree coached her before the interviews, "is to be honest about your situation without apologizing for it. You're not asking for handouts, you're asking for an opportunity to build stability for yourself and your child." The housing program offered small studio apartments in a converted building downtown. The units were basic but clean, with kitchenettes and private bathrooms. More importantly, they provided the security and stability Sophia needed to plan for her baby's arrival. Moving into her own space after 18 months of homelessness felt surreal. Sophia stood in the empty studio, looking out the window at the city that had been both cruel and kind to her, and felt a cautious optimism about the future. The apartment came with requirements. Sophia had to maintain employment, attend parenting classes, and meet regularly with a caseworker. But these obligations felt manageable compared to the daily uncertainty of life on the streets. Her job at the community center expanded as word spread about her teaching abilities. Sophia began working with adult art classes as well, helping other women express themselves. Through drawing and painting, the work was fulfilling in ways that went beyond the modest paycheck. "You have a gift for this," Desiree told her, after observing one of Sophia's classes. "You don't just teach technique, you teach people to see themselves as artists, as people capable of creating beauty." Sophia also picked up freelance work designing flyers and simple graphics for local businesses. Her artistic skills, combined with her growing reputation for reliability, created a modest but steady income stream. With stable housing and employment, Sophia could finally focus on preparing for her baby's arrival. The parenting classes required by the housing program were initially intimidating. Sophia worried that other participants would judge her for being unmarried and having been homeless. Instead, she found a supportive group of women facing their own challenges. Some were teenagers, others were older women starting families later in life, and a few were also single mothers by choice or circumstance. Motherhood is scary for everyone, the class instructor told the group. Having a partner doesn't guarantee an easy experience, and being single doesn't guarantee a difficult one. What matters is your commitment to your child and your willingness to learn. Sophia threw herself into learning everything she could about pregnancy, childbirth, and infant care. She read every book she could find, attended every optional workshop, and asked countless questions about everything from breastfeeding to sleep schedules. The other women in the program began to rely on Sophia for practical advice and emotional support. Her experience surviving difficult circumstances gave her insights into problem solving and resilience that proved valuable to the group. Sophia always finds a way. One woman commented during a group discussion about overcoming obstacles. She makes me believe that we can handle whatever comes our way. Sophia also began preparing her tiny apartment for the baby's arrival. She received donations of essential items through the community center: a crib, baby clothes, blankets, and basic supplies. Each item felt like a small miracle, a tangible sign that her child would be welcomed into a world that contained kindness alongside cruelty.
Now, I want to take a moment to talk about something important.
Sophia's story shows us how one person's belief in someone else's potential can completely change a life trajectory. Desiree didn't just offer Sophia charity, she offered her dignity, opportunity, and most importantly, she saw Sophia's worth when the rest of the world saw only her circumstances. Think about the people in your own life. Is there someone who's going through a difficult time, someone who might be facing judgment from others? Maybe it's a coworker who's struggling, a neighbor who's having a hard time, or even someone in your own family who needs support rather than criticism. Here's what I want you to do. Drop a comment below and tell me about someone who believed in you when you were at your lowest point. Who was your Desiree? Who saw your potential when you couldn't see it yourself? And if you're in a position to be that person for someone else, tell me about that too. Your stories matter because they remind us that we all have the power to change someone's life trajectory with kindness, support, and belief in their potential. Sophia's journey from homelessness to stability happened because one person took the time to see her as more than her circumstances. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Ross Story Trail because Sophia's story is about to take an incredible turn. The mystery of Nathan's disappearance is about to be solved, and when Sophia discovers the truth about who her baby's father really is, it will change everything. You won't want to miss what happens next. Sophia was 7 months pregnant when her world shifted on its axis for the second time in a year. She had been organizing art supplies at the community center after her afternoon class when she noticed a magazine someone had left on the table. The glossy cover featured the usual array of business headlines, but one particular story caught her attention. Tech visionary returns after mysterious health crisis read the headline above a photograph that made Sophia's heart stop beating. The face staring back at her from the magazine cover was unmistakably Nathan's. The same hazel eyes that had looked at her with such tenderness. The same gentle smile that had made her feel seen and valued. The same hands that had held her during their most intimate moments. But the caption beneath the photo read something that made no sense to her. Nathan Quinn, CEO of Horizon Innovations, announces return to active leadership. Sophia sank into a chair, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward, and stared at the magazine with trembling hands. This had to be a mistake. Some strange coincidence where a man who looked like Nathan happened to be on the cover of a business magazine. But as she opened to the feature article, there was no denying the truth. The man she had known as simply Nathan, the man who had told her he worked in software development, was actually Nathan Quinn, one of the youngest billionaires in Silicon Valley and the founder of a company that had revolutionized healthcare technology. The article detailed his company's latest breakthrough in making medical software accessible to underserved communities. It mentioned his estimated net worth of $8.2 billion, his reputation for privacy and philanthropy, and his recent months-long absence from the public eye due to what the article vaguely described as health complications. Sophia read every word twice, searching for some explanation that would make sense of the deception. The article mentioned that Quinn had been spotted at various hospitals and medical facilities, leading to speculation about his condition. It described his return to work as gradual and carefully managed by his medical team.
Miss Sophia, are you all right?
Asked Maria, one of the other instructors at the center. You look like you've seen a ghost. Sophia couldn't respond. She was staring at a photograph of Nathan Quinn, speaking at a technology conference surrounded by other industry leaders. In the photo, he wore the same expression of quiet intensity she remembered from their first meeting at the waterfront. The magazine article painted a picture of a man who was almost unrecognizable from the Nathan she had known. Nathan Quinn was described as a visionary leader who had dropped out of MIT at 19 to start his first company. He had built a technology empire focused on solving social problems through innovative software solutions. The article mentioned his company's work in developing medical applications for rural communities, educational software for underprivileged schools, and communication platforms for disaster relief efforts. His personal wealth was estimated at over $8 billion, making him one of the richest men under 40 in the world. But what struck Sophia most was the article's emphasis on Quinn's intensely private nature. Despite his public role as a CEO, he rarely gave interviews, never attended social events, and maintained almost no presence on social media. The article noted that even his own employees knew very little about his personal life. Quinn's dedication to his work is legendary. One unnamed source was quoted as saying, "He lives and breathes technology solutions to social problems. His office is practically a second home to him." Sophia stared at a photograph of the Horizon Innovations headquarters, a gleaming glass tower in downtown San Francisco. She had walked past this building countless times during her months on the streets, never knowing that the man she loved worked inside, never knowing that he commanded an empire from behind those reflective windows. The article went on to describe Quinn's mysterious absence from the company. For nearly 4 months, he had been completely unreachable, leading to speculation about everything from a nervous breakdown to a secret government project. The company's stock price had fluctuated wildly during his absence, and competitors had tried to poach his key employees. The return of Nathan Quinn to active leadership has stabilized not just Horizon Innovations but the entire sector, the article concluded. His vision for technology as a force for social good continues to drive innovation in ways that benefit society's most vulnerable populations. Sophia set the magazine down with shaking hands. The man who had disappeared from her life without explanation wasn't just anyone. He was one of the most powerful people in the technology industry, someone whose decisions affected millions of lives and billions of dollars. The revelation of Nathan's true identity sent Sophia into an emotional tailspin that lasted for days. She couldn't focus on her classes, couldn't sleep, and found herself constantly torn between anger, confusion, and a desperate need to understand what their relationship had really meant. Had everything between them been a lie? Had Nathan been playing some elaborate game, amusing himself with a homeless woman while his real life continued in luxury? The thought made her sick to her stomach, not just because of the betrayal it would represent, but because it would mean that the most meaningful relationship of her life had been built on deception. But then she remembered the way Nathan had looked at her, the genuine emotion in his voice when he said he loved her, the careful way he had treated her as if she were precious. Those moments had felt too real, too honest to be fabricated. Sophia began to understand why Nathan had been so secretive about his work and personal life. Dating as a billionaire CEO would be complicated in ways she couldn't even fathom. Every relationship would be suspect. Every person's motives would be questioned. Perhaps his secrecy hadn't been about deceiving her. Perhaps it had been about protecting their connection from the complications his wealth would bring. The more she thought about it, the more Sophia realized that Nathan's behavior began to make sense. His knowledge of art and philosophy, his passion for helping others, his insights into social issues. All of this aligned with the profile of a man who had built his career on solving problems for underserved communities. Even his mysterious apartment, which had seemed modest but expensive, made sense now. A billionaire would likely have multiple residences, and the one where they had been intimate was probably his escape from the pressures of his public life. But understanding Nathan's secrecy didn't resolve Sophia's internal conflict. If Nathan was worth billions of dollars, what did that mean for her and their baby? Did he have a right to know about the pregnancy? Did she have a right to his support? Would he even want to be involved? Or would a baby be seen as an inconvenience that could damage his carefully managed public image? After 3 sleepless nights of wrestling with her emotions, Sophia made a decision that terrified and determined her in equal measure. She would confront Nathan directly, go to his headquarters, and demand the explanation she deserved. The decision wasn't made lightly. Sophia knew that approaching Nathan at his workplace would be humiliating and potentially dangerous. She had no appointment, no connection to his world, and no guarantee that he would even agree to see her. But she also knew that she couldn't move forward with her life without understanding what had happened between them. Sophia spent the morning preparing for the encounter. She wore her best dress, a simple blue garment that Desiree had helped her find at a consignment shop. At 7 months pregnant, there was no hiding her condition, but she wanted to look as dignified as possible when she faced Nathan. She practiced what she would say, rehearsing explanations about their relationship and the pregnancy. but every script she prepared felt inadequate for the magnitude of what she needed to communicate. The bus ride to downtown San Francisco felt endless. Sophia stared out the window at the city that had been both cruel and kind to her, wondering if this confrontation would bring closure or create new complications. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move restlessly as if sensing her anxiety. As the Horizon Innovations building came into view, Sophia was struck by its imposing presence. The glass tower stretched 40 stories into the sky, its modern architecture a symbol of the technological power contained within. Security guards were visible at every entrance, and well-dressed employees streamed in and out of the building with purpose and confidence. For a moment, Sophia almost lost her nerve. This was Nathan's world, a world of power, wealth, and influence that was as foreign to her as another planet. She was a pregnant woman who had been homeless months earlier, and she was about to walk into the headquarters of a multi-billion-dollar company demanding to see its CEO. But then she felt the baby kick, reminding her that this wasn't just about her anymore. She was carrying Nathan's child, and that gave her the right to seek answers, regardless of how intimidating his world might be. The lobby of Horizon Innovations was everything Sophia had expected and more. Marble floors gleamed under designer lighting, and abstract art hung on walls that seemed to stretch up forever. Well-dressed employees moved through the space with purpose, their conversations filled with technical jargon and business urgency. Sophia approached the reception desk, where a young woman in an expensive suit looked up with the kind of polite smile reserved for visitors who clearly didn't belong. "Good morning," Sophia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to see Nathan Quinn, please." The receptionist's smile faltered slightly as she took in Sophia's appearance. The consignment shop dress, the worn shoes, the obviously pregnant belly that suggested this wasn't a business call. "Do you have an appointment?" the receptionist asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "No, but this is a personal matter. If you could just tell him that Sophia Reyes is here, I think he'll want to see me." The receptionist's expression shifted from polite confusion to barely concealed disdain. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Quinn doesn't take unscheduled meetings. If you'd like to submit a request through our website—" "Please," Sophia interrupted, her voice growing desperate. "Just tell him I'm here. Tell him it's about our baby." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Conversations around the lobby slowed as heads turned toward the reception desk. Sophia felt the weight of dozens of stares, heard the whispers that began to circulate through the space. "Ma'am," the receptionist said, her voice now cold and professional, "I'm going to need you to lower your voice. Mr. Quinn is not available for walk-in meetings, regardless of the nature of your situation." Sophia felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She could see security guards beginning to move toward the reception desk, could hear the murmur of conversations as people speculated about the pregnant woman making claims about their CEO. "I'm not leaving until I speak with him," Sophia said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Yes, you are," came a firm voice from behind her. A security guard had appeared at her elbow, his expression professionally neutral but his intention clear. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me." As Sophia was escorted toward the exit, she heard the whispers grow louder. Someone mentioned calling the police. Another person suggested this was the third such incident this month. The implication was clear. She was just another desperate woman making false claims about the billionaire CEO. But just as the security guard reached for the door, a familiar voice called out across the lobby, "Sophia?" Time seemed to freeze as Nathan Quinn stood by the elevator bank, surrounded by a group of executives in expensive suits. His eyes locked onto Sophia's across the busy lobby, and for a moment, the bustling corporate environment faded into background noise. He looked different than she remembered. Thinner, with new lines around his eyes that spoke of stress and exhaustion. His hair was perfectly styled, his suit impeccable, but there was something fragile about him that hadn't been there during their waterfront meetings. This was a man who had been through a serious health crisis, and it showed despite his polished appearance. "Sir?" one of the executives beside him said, clearly confused by their CEO's sudden stillness. "The board meeting is in 5 minutes." Nathan didn't respond. His eyes remained fixed on Sophia, taking in her pregnant belly, her worn dress, the security guard's hand still on her arm. The shock on his face was genuine and complete. Whatever he had expected to encounter in his corporate lobby that morning, it wasn't this. Sophia watched a series of emotions play across Nathan's features: surprise, recognition, joy, and then something that looked like panic as he realized the implications of her presence. His gaze dropped to her belly, and she saw his lips part slightly in what might have been a gasp. "Cancel the meeting," Nathan said to his assistant, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, the board has been waiting for this presentation for weeks." "Cancel it," Nathan repeated, his voice stronger now. "Cancel everything today." The security guard still held Sophia's arm, uncertain about how to proceed. The receptionist looked between her CEO and the pregnant woman with barely concealed confusion. The lobby had grown quiet as employees sensed the drama unfolding before them. Nathan crossed the marble floor with quick, determined steps, his entourage trailing behind him in confusion. When he reached Sophia, he stopped just out of arm's reach, as if afraid that touching her might make her disappear. "Sophia," he said, her name coming out like a prayer, "I've been looking everywhere for you." The security guard released Sophia's arm as Nathan approached, clearly recognizing that this was no longer a standard removal situation. The lobby buzzed with whispers and poorly concealed stares as employees tried to understand what was happening. "We need to talk," Nathan said, his voice urgent and private despite their public setting. "Privately." Sophia nodded, still trying to process the reality of seeing him again. Up close, she could see the toll that his absence had taken. There were medications visible in his suit pocket, and his breathing seemed slightly labored, despite his obvious attempt to appear strong. "My office," Nathan said, then turned to address the crowd of executives and employees who had gathered. "This is a private matter. I expect everyone to respect that." The elevator ride to the executive floor was silent, except for the mechanical hum of the machinery. Sophia felt overwhelmed by the luxury surrounding her. Marble inlays, gold fixtures, and technology she didn't recognize. This world was so far removed from the streets where they had met that it felt like a different planet. Nathan's office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of San Francisco Bay. Sophia recognized the waterfront where they had first met, now visible from a height that emphasized the distance between his world and hers. "I had a heart attack," Nathan said without preamble as soon as the office door closed. "The day after I last saw you. I was walking back from our meeting, and I collapsed on the sidewalk." Sophia sank into one of the leather chairs facing his desk, her hand unconsciously moving to her belly. "The doctors said it was stress-related," Nathan continued, pacing behind his desk. "Years of working 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. My heart just gave out." He explained how he had been rushed to the hospital, then immediately transferred to a specialized cardiac facility in Switzerland. The severity of his condition had required months of intensive treatment, during which all outside contact was strictly prohibited. "They took my phone, my computer, everything," Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "The doctor said any stress could kill me. They wouldn't let me contact anyone, wouldn't let me explain where I was going." Sophia listened in stunned silence as Nathan described his recovery process. The experimental treatments, the gradual return to basic activities, the months of wondering if he would ever be strong enough to return to his life and work. "I wrote you letters," he said, pulling open a desk drawer to reveal a stack of handwritten pages, hundreds of them. "But I had no way to send them because I didn't know how to find you." Nathan's explanation answered many of Sophia's questions, but it also raised new ones. As he spoke, his eyes kept returning to her pregnant belly, and she could see him trying to calculate timing in his head. "Sophia," he said carefully, "how far along are you?" 7 months, she replied, watching his face for his reaction. Nathan sat down heavily in his chair, the implications hitting him fully. "The baby is mine," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Sophia said simply. For several minutes neither of them spoke. Nathan stared out the window at the city below, his hands pressed against his temples. Sophia watched him process the information, wondering what he was thinking, what he was feeling. "Why didn't you try to find me?" he asked finally. Sophia almost laughed at the question. "How could I find you? You told me your name was Nathan, that you worked in software development. I went to every place we had been together, but you had vanished completely. I didn't know your last name, your address, your phone number, nothing." "I never told you about the company," Nathan said, realization dawning in his voice. "You never told me about any of this," Sophia gestured around the opulent office. "I found out who you really are from a magazine article yesterday. Before that, I thought you were just Nathan, someone who understood what it was like to be lonely." Nathan looked at her with an expression of profound sadness. "That's exactly who I am," he said. "Everything else, the money, the company, the public image, it's all just noise. When I was with you, I was just Nathan. I was more myself with you than I've ever been with anyone." Sophia felt tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Then why did you keep it secret? Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth?" "Because I was afraid," Nathan admitted. "Afraid that if you knew about the money and the company, you would see me differently. Afraid that what we had would become complicated by expectations and assumptions." He stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the waterfront where they had first met. "I've never had a relationship that wasn't affected by my wealth. Every woman I've dated has either been intimidated by it or attracted to it. With you, for the first time, I was just a man talking to a woman he was falling in love with." Their reunion was interrupted by Nathan's assistant buzzing through the intercom system. "Mr. Quinn, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. There are photographers gathering outside the building, and social media is already buzzing about the incident in the lobby. Nathan closed his eyes in frustration. How bad is it? Someone filmed the confrontation with security and uploaded it. The hashtag #QuinnBaby is already trending. The communications team is requesting an immediate meeting to discuss response strategies. Sophia felt her stomach drop. She had been so focused on confronting Nathan that she hadn't considered the possibility of media attention. The thought of their private business becoming public spectacle was terrifying. Sir, the assistant continued, legal is also concerned about potential blackmail or extortion claims. They want to know if you need security escorts arranged. That won't be necessary, Nathan said firmly. And make it clear to everyone that Sophia is not a threat. He paused, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. She's someone very important to me. Within minutes, Nathan's office was buzzing with activity. Communications specialists, legal advisors, and security personnel all had urgent questions and recommendations. Sophia felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention and the realization that her pregnancy had become a matter of corporate crisis management. We need to get ahead of this story, one of the communications specialists said. If we don't control the narrative, others will create one for us. What kind of narrative? Sophia asked, though she was afraid of the answer. The usual suspects, the specialist replied bluntly. Gold digger, blackmail attempt, publicity stunt. The media loves stories about wealthy men and mysterious women making paternity claims. Nathan's expression darkened. That's not what this is, and I won't let anyone characterize it that way. After dismissing his staff and instructing them to handle the media situation without his input until further notice, Nathan finally had the opportunity to speak with Sophia alone. The office felt quieter now, but the tension remained heavy in the air. I'm sorry, Nathan said, settling into the chair across from her. I never wanted you to experience this kind of attention. This is exactly why I was so careful about keeping my identity private. I understand now, Sophia replied. But Nathan, I've been struggling alone for months. I've been mocked, judged, and treated like I'm worthless because I'm pregnant and have no apparent support system. People assume I don't know who the father is, that I'm irresponsible or manipulative. Nathan's face grew troubled as Sophia described her experiences with societal judgment. I should have found a way to contact you. I should have. You were fighting for your life, Sophia interrupted. I understand that now, but we need to figure out what happens next. They talked for hours, sharing their experiences from the months apart. Nathan described the frustration of his recovery, the way his illness had forced him to reevaluate his priorities and his relationship with his work. Sophia told him about finding support through Desiree's program, about her job at the community center, and about the apartment she had fought so hard to secure. I don't want your money, Sophia said firmly. I want to be clear about that. I didn't come here to make demands or ask for financial support. I came here because I thought you had a right to know about the baby. Nathan studied her face carefully. What do you want from me? I want to know if you want to be involved in this child's life, Sophia said. Not as a billionaire CEO, but as Nathan, the man I fell in love with, because that's who the father of this baby is. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his eyes moving between Sophia's face and her pregnant belly. I want to be involved, he said finally. I want to be a father to our child, but I also want to be with you, Sophia. These months apart have shown me what my life is like without you, and I don't want to live that way anymore. Sophia felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Everything is different now. The media attention, the scrutiny, the complications of your public life. I don't know if I can handle that. Then we'll figure it out together, Nathan said. Just like we figured out how to build a relationship despite our different circumstances before. The only difference now is that the world knows about us. Within hours of the lobby confrontation, Sophia's life became a media circus that exceeded her worst nightmares. The video of her being escorted by security had gone viral, with millions of views and thousands of comments dissecting every aspect of her appearance and behavior. The headlines were brutal and predictable. Homeless woman claims billionaire's baby and Quinn's mystery woman, gold digger or victim. The stories that followed were filled with speculation, half-truths, and assumptions that painted Sophia as everything from a calculating manipulator to a naive victim. One particularly cruel article described her as a street artist who apparently struck gold with her pregnancy claims. Another suggested that she had targeted Nathan Quinn specifically because of his wealth and reputation for privacy. The most hurtful pieces questioned whether she even knew who her baby's father was, suggesting that her claims were desperate attempts to secure financial support. Social media was even worse. Twitter users created memes mocking her appearance in the lobby video. Instagram accounts dedicated to celebrity gossip posted side-by-side photos of Sophia and Nathan, emphasizing the contrast between her worn clothing and his expensive suit. The comments sections were filled with vitriol that made her previous experiences with street harassment seem mild by comparison. "She's obviously a scammer," read one popular comment. "Rich guys attract this kind of attention all the time. She probably saw him in the news and decided to try her luck. Look at her dress," another user wrote. "That's not how you dress if you're really in a relationship with a billionaire. She's clearly lying." The media attention extended beyond Sophia herself to her background and history. Reporters somehow discovered details about her parents' death, her former homelessness, and her current living situation. They interviewed former classmates who hadn't spoken to her in years, shelter workers who remembered her, and even strangers who claimed to have seen her on the streets. The narrative that emerged was designed to be sensational rather than accurate. Sophia was portrayed as either a victim of circumstances who had gotten lucky, or a manipulative woman who had orchestrated the entire situation for financial gain. Neither portrayal acknowledged her intelligence, her artistic talent, or her dignity in the face of impossible circumstances. The most painful part was how the media coverage affected the community center where Sophia worked. Parents called asking if their children were safe with a teacher who was involved in scandals. Desiree received dozens of calls from reporters wanting to discuss Sophia's character and history. The supportive environment that had helped Sophia rebuild her life was suddenly under scrutiny. Nathan watched the media coverage with growing fury. His communications team recommended a strategy of minimal response, suggesting that engaging with the story would only fuel more speculation. But as the attacks on Sophia's character intensified, Nathan decided to take action that went against all conventional wisdom. "I'm calling a press conference," he announced to his startled staff. "Sir, that's exactly what we shouldn't do," his communications director protested. "Engaging with this story legitimizes it. We should let it die down naturally." "They're destroying an innocent woman's reputation," Nathan replied firmly. "I won't stand by and let that happen." The press conference was scheduled for the next morning, giving Nathan's team less than 12 hours to prepare. Word spread quickly through media circles that the notoriously private Nathan Quinn would be making a statement about the pregnancy claims, and the company's stock price fluctuated wildly as investors tried to understand the implications. Sophia watched the preparations with a mixture of gratitude and terror. She had never wanted to be in the public eye, and the thought of Nathan discussing their relationship in front of cameras made her sick with anxiety. But she also knew that without his intervention, the media narrative would continue to paint her as a liar or manipulator. The press conference was held in the main conference room of Horizon Innovations, with dozens of reporters and cameras packed into the space. Nathan entered looking composed but determined, his jaw set in a way that Sophia recognized from their intimate conversations about social injustice. "Good morning," Nathan began, his voice steady despite the intensity of the moment. "I'm here to address the recent media coverage regarding my personal life, and to make some things absolutely clear." The room fell silent as reporters prepared to capture every word. Nathan looked directly into the cameras, his expression serious but not defensive. "6 months ago, I met an extraordinary woman named Sophia Reyes. She was creating art on the waterfront, and her talent was immediately obvious to anyone who took the time to look. Over the following months, we developed a relationship based on genuine connection, mutual respect, and love." Murmurs began to ripple through the press corps, but Nathan continued without acknowledging them. "Our relationship was interrupted by my serious health crisis, which required months of intensive medical treatment. During that time, I was unable to contact Sophia or anyone else outside my medical team. When I returned to active work, finding her became my top priority." Nathan's expression grew more intense as he addressed the media's characterization of Sophia. "I want to be absolutely clear about something," he said, his voice carrying an edge of controlled anger. "The woman who has been vilified in your coverage is not a gold digger, a manipulator, or a liar. She is Sophia Reyes, a talented artist who showed me kindness when she had every reason to be bitter about her circumstances." He paused, looking directly at the cameras. "Sophia never asked me for money. She never asked me for anything beyond my time and attention. When I offered to help improve her living situation, she refused because she was determined to rebuild her life through her own efforts." The reporters were scribbling notes furiously, but Nathan wasn't finished. "The media has characterized Sophia as someone who is just homeless, as if that defines her worth as a human being. Let me tell you who Sophia really is. She's a woman who lost her parents in a tragic accident and fell into homelessness through circumstances beyond her control. She's someone who continued creating art even when she had no home, no studio, and no support system." Nathan's voice grew stronger as he continued. She's a woman who teaches children at a community center, helping them express themselves through art. She's someone who has faced impossible circumstances with grace and dignity. She's the most remarkable person I've ever met, and I'm honored that she's carrying my child. The room erupted in questions, but Nathan held up his hand for silence. I want to address the elephant in the room directly. Yes, Sophia and I are expecting a child together. Yes, she came to my office to tell me about the pregnancy. And yes, I am grateful that she did, because it means I have the opportunity to be a father to our child and to be with the woman I love. He looked directly into the primary camera. If you're looking for a scandal here, you won't find one. What you'll find is a love story between two people who found each other despite impossible circumstances. What you'll find is a woman who deserves your respect, not your judgment. Nathan's final statement was delivered with quiet intensity. Sophia Reyes has more integrity in her little finger than most people I meet in boardrooms. She has survived things that would break most people, and she's done it while maintaining her compassion, her creativity, and her dignity. If you want to write stories about this situation, write about that. Write about how we've created a society where someone as exceptional as Sophia could end up without shelter. Write about how we judge people based on their circumstances rather than their character. The press conference ended with Nathan refusing to take questions, but the impact was immediate and profound. The video of his statement went viral within hours, generating millions of views and completely shifting the conversation about Sophia and their relationship. But here's what I want you to think about. Nathan Quinn didn't just defend Sophia. He challenged an entire media narrative that reduces people to their circumstances. He forced the world to see Sophia as more than just a homeless woman or a pregnancy claim. He made people recognize her as a complete human being with talents, dreams, and dignity. How many times do we see stories like this play out in the media? How many times do we watch people get reduced to simple narratives that ignore their complexity, their humanity, their worth? And how often do we participate in that reduction by sharing those stories, making those assumptions, or staying silent when we should be speaking up? I want you to drop a comment below and tell me about a time when you were judged unfairly, or when you witnessed someone else being reduced to a single aspect of their story. Maybe it was someone at work, someone in your community, or even someone in your own family. What did that experience teach you about the danger of assumptions? And here's the more important question. Have you ever been in a position to defend someone the way Nathan defended Sophia? Have you ever had the chance to speak up when someone was being unfairly characterized or judged? Tell me about that experience too, because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply tell the truth about someone's character when the world is determined to believe lies. Your stories matter because they remind us that behind every headline, every social media post, every piece of gossip, there's a real human being with a complex story that deserves to be told with dignity and respect. Sophia's story is powerful, not just because of the dramatic revelation about Nathan's identity, but because it shows us how love, truth, and courage can triumph over judgment and assumptions. Don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Ross Story Trail because this incredible story isn't over yet. We're about to see how Sophia and Nathan navigate their new reality together, and the lessons they learn about love, family, and standing up for what's right will inspire you in ways you never expected. In the weeks following Nathan's press conference, Sophia found herself at the center of a media storm that gradually shifted from cruel speculation to genuine curiosity about her story. But despite the vindication of Nathan's public support, Sophia was determined not to lose herself in the sudden change of circumstances. I need to keep working, Sophia told Nathan during one of their daily conversations. I need to maintain my life, my identity, my independence. Nathan struggled to understand her position. From his perspective, he had the resources to solve every problem Sophia faced. He could provide her with a beautiful home, the best medical care, and financial security that would last for generations. But Sophia consistently refused his more extravagant offers of help. You don't understand, Sophia explained patiently. For over a year, I survived on my own. I built skills, I found purpose, I created a life that was mine. If I just step into your world and let you take care of everything, I lose all of that. Instead of moving into Nathan's penthouse apartment, Sophia remained in her studio apartment through the housing program. She continued working at the community center, teaching art classes to children and adults who reminded her of her own journey from desperation to hope. The media attention brought unexpected opportunities. Art galleries that had never noticed Sophia's work suddenly expressed interest in showing her sketches from her time on the streets. Publishers approached her about writing a book about her experiences. Television producers wanted to create documentaries about her life. Sophia approached these opportunities with the same careful consideration she had given to Nathan's offers of help. She accepted those that allowed her to maintain control over her story and declined those that felt exploitative or sensational. "I'm not interested in being famous," she told a particularly persistent television producer. "I'm interested in using my experiences to help other people in similar situations." Nathan admired Sophia's determination, even when it frustrated him. He had never met anyone who was so resistant to the advantages his wealth could provide, and her insistence on maintaining her independence challenged his assumptions about relationships and support. With Nathan's encouragement and financial support, which Sophia accepted only after insisting on treating it as a loan, Sophia enrolled in online courses to complete her degree. The flexibility of distance learning allowed her to continue working at the community center while pursuing her education. Her art evolved during this period, influenced by her experiences with homelessness, pregnancy, and sudden media attention. The sketches she had created during her darkest moments became the foundation for a series of paintings that captured the complexity of urban poverty and human resilience. "Your work has a depth now that it didn't have before," Nathan observed, studying Sophia's latest paintings in the makeshift studio she had set up in her apartment. "These pieces tell stories that most people never hear." Sophia's art classes at the community center became more popular as word spread about her background and talent. Students were drawn to her authenticity, her ability to understand struggle, and her skill at helping others express their own experiences through art. "Miss Sophia," one teenage student said during a particularly emotional class, "your art makes me feel like my problems are worth drawing about, like my life matters enough to put on paper." These moments reminded Sophia why she had been so determined to maintain her independence. Her value wasn't derived from her relationship with Nathan or the media attention surrounding their story. Her value came from her ability to connect with others, to help them see themselves as worthy of artistic expression, and to create beauty from pain. Sophia also began teaching art therapy sessions for other women in transitional housing programs. Her combination of artistic skill and personal experience with homelessness made her uniquely qualified to help others process their trauma through creative expression. "Art saved my life," Sophia told a group of women during one of these sessions. "When I had nothing else, I had pencil and paper. When I couldn't afford canvas, I drew on cardboard. When I couldn't find hope in my circumstances, I found it in creating something beautiful." Nathan and Sophia's shared passion for helping others led to the creation of the Reyes Quinn Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting homeless individuals with artistic and academic potential. The foundation provided not just financial assistance, but mentorship, education, and opportunities for personal growth. "Traditional homeless services focus on basic needs," Sophia explained to a group of potential donors. "Food, shelter, clothing, all essential but not sufficient. People need purpose, dignity, and the chance to develop their talents." The foundation's programs included mobile art studios that brought supplies and instruction to homeless encampments, scholarship programs for students who had experienced housing instability, and a network of mentor artists who worked with participants to develop their skills and confidence. Nathan brought his business acumen and resources to the foundation, while Sophia provided the vision and personal understanding of what homeless individuals actually needed. Their collaboration was powerful, combining Nathan's analytical approach with Sophia's intuitive understanding of human struggle. "We're not trying to manage poverty," Nathan explained to a tech industry publication. "We're trying to end it by recognizing and developing the potential that society overlooks." The foundation's first major success was a gallery exhibition featuring artwork created by homeless individuals. The show, titled Invisible Voices, challenged visitors to see beyond stereotypes and recognize the humanity and creativity that exists in every person, regardless of their circumstances. The exhibition was both a critical and commercial success, with several pieces selling for significant amounts that went directly to the artists. More importantly, it changed conversations about homelessness in San Francisco, shifting focus from pity to recognition of human potential. Sophia went into labor on a crisp March morning, 3 weeks before her due date. Nathan was in a board meeting when he received the call, and he left immediately, abandoning a room full of investors to rush to the hospital. "I'm not missing this," he told Sophia as she gripped his hand through a contraction. "I missed too much of your pregnancy. I'm not missing our daughter's birth." The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 18 hours. Sophia's strength and determination impressed the medical staff, who had heard about her story and were rooting for her success. Nathan remained by her side throughout, holding her hand, encouraging her, and marveling at her courage. Luna Reyes Quinn was born at 6:47 a.m., weighing 6 pounds and 3 ounces. She had Sophia's dark hair and Nathan's hazel eyes, and she entered the world with a cry that seemed to announce her determination to be heard. "She's perfect," Nathan whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held his daughter for the first time. She's absolutely perfect. Sophia watched Nathan with their daughter and felt a completeness she had never experienced before. This was their family, unconventional, born from struggle, but filled with love and purpose. The media attention surrounding Luna's birth was intense but manageable. Nathan's security team worked with the hospital to ensure privacy, and Sophia's friends from the community center formed an informal support network that helped shield her from unwanted attention. Desiree was among the first visitors, arriving with a handmade blanket and tears of joy. "Look what you've built," she told Sophia, gesturing to the room filled with flowers from well-wishers. "You've created something beautiful from the most difficult circumstances." As Luna grew, Sophia and Nathan developed a family structure that reflected their values and their individual needs. Rather than conforming to traditional expectations about wealthy families, they created something that honored both of their backgrounds and priorities. Sophia continued living in her studio apartment during the week, maintaining her independence and her connection to the community that had supported her. Nathan purchased the apartment building and converted it into affordable housing for other women in transition, ensuring that Sophia's neighbors shared her values and experiences. On weekends, Sophia and Luna would stay at Nathan's penthouse, giving Luna exposure to both worlds while ensuring she understood the importance of both privilege and responsibility. Nathan learned to navigate Sophia's neighborhood, becoming a familiar figure at the community center and local businesses. "Luna needs to understand where she comes from," Sophia explained to a family friend. "She needs to know that her father's wealth is a responsibility, not just a privilege, and that her mother's struggles were part of what made her strong." Nathan embraced this philosophy, often bringing Luna to foundation events and community center activities. He wanted his daughter to see him not just as a CEO, but as someone committed to using his resources to help others. Their relationship remained unconventional by society's standards. They were deeply committed to each other and to their family, but they maintained separate residences and independent careers. Nathan continued running his company, while Sophia expanded her art therapy programs and completed her degree. "People expect us to get married and move to the suburbs," Sophia told a journalist. "But we're building something that works for us, not something that meets other people's expectations." Their love story had begun with two people from different worlds finding connection despite their circumstances. Their family continued that theme, creating a structure that honored both their individual identities and their shared commitment to each other and their daughter. Luna grew up surrounded by love, art, and the understanding that every person has value regardless of their circumstances. She learned about resilience from her mother's story, about responsibility from her father's example, and about the importance of using whatever advantages she had to help others. Sophia and Nathan's story teaches us profound lessons about the nature of human connection, the danger of assumptions, and the power of seeing beyond circumstances to recognize the worth in every person. Their journey began with two people who were both invisible to society in different ways. Sophia was literally invisible, a homeless woman whom most people looked past without seeing. Nathan was invisible behind his wealth and public image, a billionaire whom people saw only as a symbol of success rather than as a human being seeking authentic connection. When they found each other on that San Francisco waterfront, neither knew the other's full story. Sophia didn't know that Nathan commanded a multi-billion-dollar empire. Nathan didn't know that Sophia was sleeping in shelters and doorways. What they discovered was something far more important than external circumstances. They found genuine compatibility, shared values, and mutual respect. Their relationship proved that love doesn't require equal circumstances. It requires equal dignity. Sophia never needed Nathan's money to be worthy of his love, and Nathan never needed to hide his success to be worthy of Sophia's affection. What they needed was the courage to see each other as complete human beings, rather than collections of advantages or disadvantages. The challenges they faced, Nathan's health crisis, Sophia's pregnancy, the media scrutiny, and societal judgment, tested their connection but ultimately strengthened it. They learned that authentic relationships can survive external pressures when they're built on genuine understanding and shared commitment to each other's growth and happiness. Perhaps most importantly, their story demonstrates that our worst moments don't define us, and our circumstances don't determine our worth. Sophia's homelessness was a temporary condition, not a permanent identity. Nathan's wealth was a tool for impact, not a measure of his value as a person. Both of them were more than their situation suggested. 2 years after Luna's birth, Sophia and Nathan chose to marry at the exact spot where they had first met. The ceremony was small and intimate, attended by the people who had supported them through their most difficult times: Desiree, the community center staff, Nathan's closest colleagues, and a few dozen friends who had watched their love story unfold. Sophia wore a simple white dress that she had designed herself, incorporating elements that reflected her artistic vision. Nathan wore a suit, but he also carried a small sketchpad, a tribute to the art supplies that had first brought them together. The officiant was a woman from the community center who had known Sophia since her earliest days in the program. Her words captured the essence of their journey. "Sophia and Nathan, you found each other not because of your circumstances, but in spite of them. You built a love that transcended difference, a partnership that honors both your individual identities and your shared commitment to making the world better." Luna, now a toddler with her mother's artistic temperament and her father's intense curiosity, served as the ring bearer. She tottered down the aisle carrying a small pillow, stopping to examine interesting stones and shells along the way, a perfect metaphor for the family's approach to life. The reception was held in the community center where Sophia taught her art classes. The walls were lined with artwork created by her students, including several pieces that depicted Sophia and Nathan's story as seen through the eyes of people who understood struggle and triumph. "We wanted to celebrate here," Sophia explained to a journalist covering the wedding, "because this place represents what we believe in, that everyone deserves dignity, opportunity, and the chance to create beauty from difficult circumstances." The wedding cake was simple but elegant, decorated with edible flowers that Sophia had chosen herself. The menu included dishes from the food trucks where Sophia had bought meals during her homeless period, elevated by the catering company, but maintaining their authentic flavors. Sophia and Nathan's story serves as a powerful reminder of how quickly we judge others based on limited information, and how often those judgments are completely wrong. When people first saw Sophia on the streets, they saw a homeless woman and made assumptions about her intelligence, her character, and her potential. They didn't see the talented artist who had survived tragedy and was fighting to rebuild her life. They didn't see the woman who would become a teacher, a mentor, and a foundation leader. When people learned about Nathan's wealth, they assumed Sophia must be manipulative or opportunistic. They couldn't imagine that a billionaire and a homeless woman could have an authentic relationship based on genuine connection rather than financial advantage. The media coverage of their story initially reflected these same assumptions. Headlines reduced Sophia to her most difficult circumstances and portrayed their relationship as a transaction rather than a love story. It took Nathan's public defense and the subsequent revelation of their shared values to shift the narrative. But the most important lesson isn't about media coverage or public perception. It's about the daily judgments we all make about the people around us. How often do we see someone's current situation and assume it represents their entire story? How often do we judge potential based on present circumstances? Sophia's journey from homelessness to stability, from isolation to love, from judgment to respect, shows us that every person carries invisible stories of struggle, talent, and possibility. The person experiencing homelessness might be an artist. The person working multiple jobs might be a brilliant student. The person facing judgment might be someone whose love story will inspire thousands. At its heart, Sophia and Nathan's story isn't about wealth or poverty, homelessness or privilege. It's about the fundamental human need for connection, understanding, and recognition of our inherent worth. Their love story began with two people who were both seeking something that money couldn't buy, genuine connection with another human being who could see them as they truly were. Sophia needed someone who could see past her circumstances to recognize her intelligence, creativity, and strength. Nathan needed someone who could see past his wealth to connect with his values, his loneliness, and his desire to make a meaningful impact. What they found together was the recognition that every person has value that transcends their circumstances. Sophia's worth wasn't diminished by her homelessness, and Nathan's worth wasn't enhanced by his wealth. They were both valuable because they were human beings with dignity, dreams, and the capacity to love and be loved. Their story also demonstrates the transformative power of believing in someone else's potential. Desiree saw Sophia's strength and offered her opportunity. Nathan saw Sophia's talent and supported her growth. Sophia saw Nathan's genuine character and helped him maintain his humanity despite his wealth and power. The foundation they built together continues their commitment to recognizing potential in people whom society overlooks. Every person they help represents another opportunity to prove that circumstances don't define worth and that everyone deserves dignity and opportunity. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through Sophia and Nathan's story. If this tale has moved you, inspired you, or changed how you think about the people around you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts about this story. Tell me about a time when you or someone you know was judged unfairly based on circumstances. Share a story about finding connection in unexpected places, or about someone who believed in your potential when others didn't. Your engagement means everything to this channel. Every like, every comment, every share helps spread stories like Sophia and Nathan's to people who need to hear them. These aren't just entertainment. They're reminders about the power of human connection and the importance of seeing beyond surface appearances. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to Mr. Ross Story Trail. We have more incredible stories coming that will challenge your assumptions, warm your heart, and remind you of the extraordinary potential that exists in every human being. Remember, the next time you see someone and feel tempted to judge them based on their current circumstances, think about Sophia and Nathan. Think about the love stories, the hidden talents, the untold struggles, and the incredible potential that might be invisible to you, but are absolutely real to them. Thank you for being part of this community, and I'll see you in the next story.